I've had deer at 30 yards. I'm in a ghillie suit, and I can get away with murder in that ghillie suit.
But just for people who are unfamiliar, you are mostly a ground hunter. You use ghillie suits a lot. You use traditional archery equipment. Can you just briefly explain kind of your style?
I would choose a bedding area that I knew. It would be places I hunt, I know the bedding areas. And now this is if I was trying to get a good shot at maybe a decent buck. Is I would go out and if I was using the ghillie suit, the main thing is to make sure that you have a good fix on the wind. Because hunting bedding areas is very tricky. And my game plan was to get out there, be as scent free as possible. I would smoke up. I've had some confusion from people. I had one guy that he was a friend of mine a few years ago, and I told him about smoking up. And he went and got a bunch of plastic and stuff out of his garbage and set fire to it and smoked up in that. Don't do that. I'm talking about leaves and natural material. Yeah, he wasn't a real bright fellow. I love him. I love him to death, but he's it is what it is. But don't smoke up in your kitchen garbage. Pro tip number one. And then I wanted to spend some time at the edge of that bedding area, watching that bedding area, because I'm probably going to be in the middle of the day. And then I'll spend my day around the bedding area. I may drift over to another one. And if I haven't gotten an opportunity, usually I'll try to find somewhere right before dark, hour or so, to just sit and watch. Kind of take a stand, so to speak. Maybe under a tree, maybe on a trail. That was my general game plan. Now, it usually got changed by circumstances. And that's kind of what you have to do is let circumstances change. I'm a big proponent, and I've done this several times. I've seen a buck leave his bedding area. He'll leave it. There he went. I see him out there too. I catch a glimpse of him 200 yards through big timber, say. Well, I'll try to, where is that buck going? Sometimes I know, sometimes I don't know. If it's in the rut, it's real tricky. The rut is actually, can make things more difficult in some ways. But if I see him coming out there and I know that he's going to wind up at a food plot over here a few hundred yards away or a bean field, man, I'll break and truck it and make a big circle and try to get in front of where I think he's going to show up. And I've killed a lot of deer like that. Just if you know the terrain enough and you know your area, which isn't going to always be the case, and you see that deer, you can often get in front of him. Now, I don't mean run toward him and try to run up on him. You got to cut him off. And ironically, you can't do that with a hog. I can't do it with a hog. I have tried that with hogs, and you cannot get in front of that hog. I can't. Maybe somebody else can. I've tried it multiple times, kind of getting off on a tangent there, but I love shooting hogs too, especially with traditional bows. And that pig is actually, in many ways, tougher to hunt than a deer. But you can't get in front of him. You can get in front of a buck because he's probably not. Now, if he's in the rut, all bets are off. He's allowed to be trotting toward a hot doe. But if you think he's going to a food source or something, you can get around him and you can cut him off. But I don't have a static plan that I stick to. I generally have an area. When we ride around on the four-wheeler a little bit later, I'll show you some bedding areas that have been bedding areas my whole life. Sometimes the terrain changes. If I'm going after meat, if I'm after a doe, what I'll be doing next week is I will be spending my time down on the river in transition zones. And I will try to spot a deer and then get in front of it, be it a doe or whatever. So it just depends on what I'm doing. I don't have a static. I kind of go with a general plan, and I get in the woods, and then I'm very aggressive at changing my plans. A lot of big deer have been saved by people that won't think outside the box or stick to the plan.
Yeah, I was curious about your thought process behind how you move because when you say that you're going and you're creeping up to the edge of a bedding area and then maybe you're kind of working around that one and then you drift off to another one, which I can hear like the similarity in the language of between you and your Uncle Red, like kind of drifting through the woods like a puff of smoke, just being stealthy. What is it when you get to the edge of a bedding area? What is it that you're looking for exactly? Because I'm always curious of if I'm creeping along the edge of a bedding area and I find a scrape in a big trail, why not just sit there for the rest of the day? Why keep moving? Or unless that's just what you like to do.
Well, most of the bedding areas in this part of the world are going to have multiple big trails coming out of all sides of them. So you're playing, that's certainly not the worst thing you can do is sit on a major trail by a bedding area, especially if you can get to it without alerting everything. Now, some terrain allows movement. I don't care how good a woodsman you are. This is Southwest Mississippi. You're not going to go right out here. The National Forest is just a few hundred yards that way. You're not going to move through them woods and not make some noise. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you put on moccasins. I don't care what you do. You can be barefooted. You're going to make some noise. The secret is to make noise, but don't sound like a human. One of the biggest things you can do if you're slipping through the woods, and I do this working my way to my stand, because it doesn't do any good to get to your stand if you're hunting a food plot with a rifle and the deer are coming from a few hundred yards and you're 200 yards from them. Entry and exit is much easier than if you're trying to tuck in with a bow and get right next to his bedding area and catch him coming out of his bedding area. Very different scenario. Under the second scenario, you've got to get in position on the edge of that bedding area without letting everything know you're there. Then you got to have the wind not blowing in the bedding area. There's a lot of things got to come together. So one of the best pieces of advice I can give, we're all going to break sticks. We're going to do something to make a little noise. When you break something, when you make that noise, stop. Just stop right there. It's not a big deal. It's not a big deal till you keep going and break a stick. A few seconds later, break a stick. Animals don't do that. Armadillos do. But you watch a deer moving through the woods, if he breaks something, and you can hear a deer. You'll hear one of the best ways to ID a deer in the woods instead of a squirrel or something is you'll hear a twig break. Then nothing. 5 minutes later, you hear another twig break. It's making a cadence of sound that's the problem. If you break a stick, sit there a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, look around, glass. Don't regularly make loud noise. Now, metallic, anything in your gear that you can get rid of metallic sounds, I just find metallic, and I have a lot of experience with this in ghillie suits. I've had deer at 30 yards. I'm in a ghillie suit, and I can get away with murder in that ghillie suit. And I will do something that, I remember one time I had a quiver, and I had put it's right here somewhere. It's that quiver there. And I had a thing on the side of it that I used to like to start fires with, a little metallic thing. It was a type of lighter is what it was. And I moved, and somehow it come around and hit I think I got a bear, and it wasn't even other metal, but it made a tink. And immediately, everybody's looking at me. Metallic is not natural, and it's going to get their attention. So you're going to make noise. You've just got to make the right kind of noise. Make as little as possible. The biggest thing is when you do mess up and break a twig or something, stop for a while.